Where are they?
Because I don't have.
They are in the apartment that I did.
But it's not yours. You were renting or you own it?
Yeah, I own it.
You own it.
So one room there is everything that
All
I
of your
have.
stuff. I see.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sell it, or? I mean, your kids want it or something?
Yeah, they go there.
They go there to check it out. Thank you. It's working perfect. Okay.
They go there to see. And my old son has something here, very high.
Yeah.
And my daughter also.
Okay.
She's a medical doctor.
Mm. How many children do you have?
3.
3 children.
2 boys.
Amazing. And they all live in Sweden.
All live in Sweden. And
Married Swiss. Yeah.
to Swedes.
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
I have 9 grandchildren.
That's amazing. Wow. Wow. When are you traveling to see them?
I go time to time.
Here you go. Good. Okay.
February 2nd.
Oh, you're going soon?
5. I'm going there.
Okay.
1 week. May.
To Stockholm?
In Stockholm.
Okay.
And May.
Again?
And then before the summer is over, I don't go for midsummer.
Okay. It's too hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, midsummer is the party.
The party, you don't want to be there.
Where
It's too much noise.
They put the tree
I see.
and dancing. Yeah. And we have a house in the countryside also. But because my wife was the person that loved the small house, and when she died, nobody go there.
So, you should sell it. You should sell it or use it.
Sell it. They don't want to go there. Don't talk about the house
Okay. Interesting.
because
Interesting. I don't know.
rent to people to
Right,
go sell.
sure.
No, it's because
It's interesting.
is
Okay.
don't
Okay.
talk.
All right. Well, your kids are in charge now, huh?
Don't talk about it.
Tov. Bezrat Hashem. Bezrat Hashem. You should have good health. Okay, let's begin. We're in chapter 19. We spoke about the prohibition of making holes in the earth and moving the earth around because it's like plowing. And we talked about not watering plants because that's going to be making them grow better. And just like you're not allowed to plant a seed, you're not allowed to make a plant grow better. Believe it or not, there's a question whether or not you can, if you have a beautiful flower in the room and the windows are closed, the blinds are closed, and it's a sunny day. So if you open up the windows, the blinds, the curtain, the sunshine's going to come in and shine on your flowers and going to make them grow better. So can you do that on Shabbat? It's not so simple because you can't do anything to cause the plants to grow. He says here on page 78, since you did not open the shades and windows for this purpose, the benefit to the plant is remote, it is not prohibited. It's not the normal way. We talked about how important it is. It's only forbidden biblically if you do something in the normal way of planting or is watering or putting a seed in the ground, but not opening a window, opening a curtain. So, I mean, if you have a flower right next to the curtain and you open it for the flower, that's more of a problem. But if you just, you want more light in the house and there happens to be a plant there that's going to get benefit, it's allowed because it's so indirect. And that's not your intention. So Rabbi Lamed on page 70 says it's allowed. It's so interesting, that because we have to be so careful not to water the plants, you're not supposed to have a party in the garden on Shabbat, food and drink. If you want to wash Natilat Yadayim, your water is going to go all over the grass, and you're watering the grass. You're not even supposed to spit onto grass because you'll be causing it to grow. So if there's nothing growing there, if it's asphalt or if it's paved over, that's fine. But if you have dirt, earth there, you have to be careful. Sometimes there's a shul near me, and I used to have this in my house. I used to recycle the water. I used to recycle from the bathtub. I had a separate system where the pipes would go out into a little tank, and whenever the tank would overflow, I had a pump, and it would go out and water the yard. The question is, what about on Shabbat? I use all the water, it comes out of the sink, it's going to water the yard. So if it's indirect, it's not going to directly, really, I just want to wash my hands in the sink, I just want to use the bathtub. That's fine. And the fact that later on the water, so if it happens directly, immediately, it's a problem. Like I said, you shouldn't wash your hands on top of the lawn, on top of the grass. But if it happens indirectly, like the water spills from your hands or from your sink onto rocks, and then from the rocks it goes into the garden, there's room to be lenient. So you've got to be careful not to water your plants on Shabbat. Okay? Let's see what other issues we have here coming up. But since we don't plant, we're not farmers. Kotzer, we mentioned it, I think in passing, you're not allowed to tear off a branch from a tree. Just like you're not allowed to harvest, you're not allowed to take fruit off the tree. It's cutting down, picking fruits or branches or leaves, prohibited.
In Shemitah, is also prohibited.
In Shemitah, the Torah, on the one hand, says don't harvest. On the other hand, it says eat the fruit from the Shemitah year. So how can you eat the fruit if you don't harvest? So the rabbis have a tradition where we need the oral Torah. The oral Torah's got to explains to us that you're not allowed to harvest in a normal way. Like farmers harvest the entire crop together and then they go and sell it or whatever it is. You're allowed to harvest a little bit at a time. Enough for you and your family for 1 day, 2 days, right? Not industrial type of harvesting, but harvesting for individuals allowed. So that's what I did during Shemitah. I went to my garden. I never really harvest all at once in any case. I don't have too many fruit trees, but you're allowed to harvest one at a time, but not on Shabbat. On Shabbat, not at all. You cannot pluck a fruit. You cannot pull off some leaves, anything. Sometimes I see people sitting on the grass on Shabbat. That's okay. But sometimes you absent-mindedly, you're not thinking. You pull up some grass, pull up some leaves. Not good on Shabbat. There's a story about Rav Kook. What a sensitive soul. And he was walking down the street with his student, and they were talking in Torah, they're having a Torah discussion. And just walking by the street, the student, another great rabbi, he saw a branch that was sticking out where he was walking. He pulled off the branch. Sometimes you do pull off a branch. You see a branch that's sticking out, you pull it off, you play with it, you touch it. Rav Kook was shocked. This is not Shabbat. On Shabbat, he would never do such a thing. It's prohibited. But during the weekday, why is he so shocked? Rav Kook said, we want things to grow and to live. When you cut something off, you're causing it to die. We have to be sensitive to the life of plants as well as the life of humans. But that's a special sensitivity. Usually during the week, you want to, cut off a branch, you want to smell something. In Israel, we teach our children, very much it's a national pastime. We have to protect the nature, especially the flowers. A lot of Israel has lots of wild flowers. And it's a very Israeli movement to identify the various flowers. And you go on a tiyul, you learn, this is this flower, it grows in this season, and this is early in the season, this is late in the season. And it's a beautiful thing to appreciate nature. And so we teach our children not to pick the wildflowers because they're protected. If we pick them all, they won't grow. So it's good to teach your children not to pick flowers unnecessarily, but especially on Shabbat. On Shabbat, it's prohibited from the Torah to pick a flower, so to attach anything. It's interesting that you are allowed to, once you have, sometimes in some Sephardi shuls, they give out nana for you to smell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so can you crumple it up and detach the leaves? And I say yes, because it's already detached. It's only when it's still growing in the ground that it's prohibited. But if cut off from before Shabbat, then you can pull off the leaves and smell them, no problem. Now, the rabbis were so worried that people are going to cut things off the tree, harvest, branch, whatever. They said, we're making up a new rule, rabbinic prohibition. You're not allowed to climb a tree. You're not allowed to use a tree, to hang something on a tree. Because anytime you use the tree, you might be coming to cut off a branch or leaf. So we don't put anything on the tree on Shabbat. You shouldn't lean on a tree, because it's using a tree on Shabbat. It's a rabbinic prohibition to use the tree. Now, I have at my home, in my garden, I have a hammock.
What?
Hammock. It's like a place to lie, which is, you attach it, you hang on ropes, you tie it to two trees. In the middle, there's like a place to, hammock. What do you call it? I don't know. A hangmat. Okay, yeah. It's the same thing, yes.
We use a lot.
Yeah. So it's fun, it's nice, it gives you a nice feeling. You're in the garden, you swing, it's very relaxing, right?
Yeah.
Can you do that on Shabbat? So if the hammock, if this bed, is tied directly onto the tree, no, because you're using the tree. Rabbi said, we're not going to go crazy. It's a rabbinic prohibition to use a tree, right? So they said, well, what if you attach something else? Let's say you put a peg into the tree, and then you attach the ropes onto the peg. So that's called, you're not actually using the tree, you're using a derivative or an attachment to the tree. So you're allowed to use an attachment to the tree. It's called a double, it has to be twice removed from actually using the tree itself, right? You're using the hammock, which is using the hook, which is using the tree. So you have a double stage of something being removed. So, but other than that, good morning. You have to be careful. The truth is, you're not allowed to tear off, as I said, when you're sitting on the lawn, little pieces of grass. What if walking on the grass? What happens when you walk on the grass? Many times the grass gets ripped off when you play soccer. I'm not talking about if you have, what are those called, underneath your feet? Spikes. Spikes, special soccer shoes. That for sure, it tears up the grass. That's for sure prohibited. Walking on the grass, the rabbis make a distinction. They say if it's a field that's left with high grass, you walk through, every step you take, you rip. It's like a jungle, right? You have to, for sure you're going to rip off grass. You're not allowed to walk in high grass. But if it's low grass, it's not for sure. If you walk carefully, you don't always rip up. Sometimes you just push down the grass that you're stepping on. If it's not for sure going to happen and you don't intend to cut off the blades of grass, so you're allowed to walk on the lawn, even if it may uproot some leaves. But if it's for sure going to uproot the leaves, then you're not allowed to. So you have to be careful if the grass is high, that you don't even walk there. Now, the rabbis were so worried about this prohibition is called kotzer. Kotzer means to harvest, cutting off something that's growing from the ground. The rabbis were so careful about cutting off a branch from the tree. From here, we get a rabbinic prohibition of riding a horse. If you ride a horse, you need a whip. So maybe you pull off a branch and whip the horse. So you're not allowed to use animals either. Because also you might want to feed your animals. Pull off some branches, give him some animals eat the hay and eat all sorts of things that grow in the ground. So we have to we're not allowed to ride the animals.
Oh, this is the question that
Yeah.
You ride
Not allowed on Shabbat, rabbinically prohibited.
and no sport.
Right, well, if you're riding them, I don't know what other sport is there with animals, I don't know. Tell me what sport?
Horse polo.
Mm-hmm.
You know what is horse polo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Not allowed on Shabbat. Did you play that? You did?
many years
Really?
until broke my back. What they call this?
Tailbone?
Tailbone.
Wow. You used to be a big rider. You have to be a good rider to play
I have
that.
a good handicap. I have a handicap 7.
I'm not sure what that means, but...
It means of the best stand,
I
the
see.
worst is 2
Right.
0
Okay.
minus.
Wow. Okay, so you played professionally in a team, in a league?
I did it in Ghana sometime.
In Ghana, wow.
I did in Brazil. I learned in Argentina.
Wow. And so you ride bareback or you ride on a saddle?
And the saddle
On a
is
saddle.
very good equipment.
Very good equipment and stuff. Wow. And then you fell off one day? You had an accident? You broke your tailbone?
We broke Chitiada.
Uh-huh.
Because it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
The ball goes like this.
All right.
You can't go
Sideways, yeah.
sideways and not so if
Into each other, yeah.
into each other,
Mm-hmm.
though you can fall.
Yeah.
You fall the horses, and it can happen.
Right.
We lose at least 7, 8 ball player
Wow.
in the air.
Wow.
In the whole world. In the whole world.
Wow.
The Indians and the Americans and the Argentinians is the best one.
The best polo players. Okay, amazing.
So
All right.
we make more money.
You play professionally?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But I don't have horses.
Okay.
So I hide the horses over to somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and he paid to me to pay in his name.
To play for him with his horses. Wow. Yeah, so not on Shabbat.
No.
Because the rider might break a branch off. Yeah, fair. Very good. Okay. What happens, we said the other day, with flowers that were picked before Shabbat? It's actually quite a common custom that you notice every Friday they sell flowers. So beautiful. For the honor of Shabbat, it's nice to have cut flowers, fresh flowers. But so you bring them home on Friday afternoon. You put them in a vase, right?
Yeah.
Vase or vase? What do you say?
Vase.
Vase. Okay. And then you put it on the table to make the Shabbat table pretty. But then the tablecloth got dirty. You want to move. Can you move the flowers? The answer is yes. If the cut, page 83. There's no problem at the bottom of page 83. There's no problem of kotzer since there are no roots. You're not cutting anything off from where it grows. There's no roots.
But actually it grows further in the vase.
True.
But we're moving the west, not the...
Yeah, but now the first thing is to move the entire vase without taking the flowers out of the water. Taking them out, it's a problem putting them back in. Because then putting them in, you're going to make them continue to grow or grow further.
But taking now is allowed.
Taking them out is allowed because they're not really growing there. They're just existing there. You can take them out, and then that's on the next page, page 84. I'm in chapter 19, section 9. Once removed, you cannot replace them. So if one receives a bouquet of flowers as a gift on Shabbat, sometimes I have a guest, and he doesn't know that if you give me flowers that are cut, or any type of flowers on Shabbat, I can't really save them. I can't put them in water because maybe the flowers will open up further. One may not place them in water. This will cause the flowers to grow and open. Rather, one should put the bouquet in a vase that does not contain water. Well, that's better than nothing. You have somewhere to put them, but they're going to die very quickly. But you can't put them in water if they're going to continue to grow because you put them in water on Shabbat. So you have to take your cut flowers, put them in the water from before Shabbat. Okay?
If somebody gives you flowers on Shabbat,
say thank you. Don't have to embarrass them. They're doing the wrong thing usually, because when you transport the flowers, you're taking them. You have to put them in water, or they're going to die. So, but you can't put them in water. You can't put them in water.
you just poke face.
You can say thank you, and put them in a vase without water. Put them in a vase. They won't notice you. Put water. Don't put water. And if they ask, we'll say, Shabbat, I don't put flowers in water. But you can put them. You can handle them. They're not muktzeh because they're not. They don't have roots. You're not taking them. Yes.
For example, if you know mint tea.
Yes.
You have we had it in the garden. You take a few big sticks with leaves.
Yeah.
Can you on Shabbat pick the leaves from the sticks?
As we said, if it's not connected to the ground anymore, you're allowed to take off the leaves. Yeah. Right. We learned that out from the halacha of Sukkot. You have the hadassim. Sometimes the hadas has some extra branches, or it has a little berry, and the halacha is it's kosher as long as its majority is leaves and just a few berries. Some people don't like to take the berries off. They don't like to see the berries, so they take them off. You're allowed to do that on Sukkot, even though it's Yom Tov. You're allowed to. Yes. Would you like some tearing?
No. Tear.
Yeah. What about tearing? Yeah.
Shabbat.
Well, we said before, we talked about packaging, that is, if you're not doing any constructive, the tearing that's prohibited is tearing so that you can sew. Tearing so you can put back together. When you open this up, you're not going to put it back together. So the package of tea is what Binyamin is showing me. You can open up the package of tea and then you throw it out. You use the tea. The point is to use the tea, what's inside. You're allowed to open up the package to get what's inside on Shabbat, even though you're tearing the package, because that's tearing, which is a destructive tearing. It's not a constructive tearing. It's best if you can avoid tearing on the letters. You see these little letters there?
Yeah.
So if you can avoid tearing on the letters, that's best. But if you can't avoid it, you're not intending to destroy the writing. You don't care whether the writing is there or not. That's just marketing.
You can.
You can. Yes, you may.
But why you cannot tear toilet paper?
Good question. Tearing toilet paper, it's not really destructive. You want the toilet paper on the roll to stay there, and you're taking the toilet paper to use the toilet paper. You're not taking it to throw out.
No.
Here, you're tearing the package to throw it out. You're not going to use the package. You want to get something inside. To tear the toilet paper, you want to use the toilet paper. So it's rabbinically prohibited. We talked about it the other day that,
Yeah, I did.
if you have no choice, you can do it with a shinui, with a not the normal way, and be careful not to do it on the perforation. It's better. But the difference is that the toilet paper you want to use, what you're tearing.
Yeah.
But here, you don't want to use what you're tearing. You want to get what's inside. You want to get the tea bag. Right? What you're tearing is the wrapper. Toilet paper is not a wrapper. You want the paper. So you're tearing for using what you tear, so it's rabbinically prohibited. But tearing the packaging, which you don't want the packaging, that's even permitted for the sake of getting what you want to use on Shabbat. Questions? Yeah.
If you have like a bag of chips and you make it open,
Yeah.
can you fold it and put a clip on it? After?
Good question. Right. So sometimes people reuse the packaging. It used to be much more because there was more scarcity in material goods. People would reuse everything. Now we're spoiled, and the government is trying to teach us to recycle because we're using up too much plastics and it's pollution and so forth. But people who do recycle, it's a bigger question. Because then when you open up that bag, you're creating a vessel, like we talked about when we talked about bonnet, building. So the answer is that if it's disposable, like when you finish the chips, there's some poskim say it's forbidden. Because you're going to be using the bag over and over and over again, you're not throwing it out immediately. It's not like a tea bag. You take out the tea bag out of the package, you throw it out. It's not useful for anything else. But a bag of chips, if it's a big bag and you eat a little today, a little bit an hour later, a little bit tomorrow, a little bit the next day, and you have a clip which you put on, a clip is no problem. But the problem is when the first time you open the bag on Shabbat, maybe you're creating this vessel. Some rabbis say you shouldn't do it, but there's room to be lenient because some rabbis say we look at what is the definition of this vessel. And the bottom line is it's disposable. You're not going to reuse. Once the chips are finished, you've eaten up all the chips, you've had your party, you're going to throw it out. You're not going to keep it for secondary use, right? Yeah. You throw it out. So it's disposable. Once this is disposable, it's not considered to be creating a proper vessel. But what you do, you will see some people in some homes, because some rabbis are stringent, what they'll do is when they open a bag of chips, they'll immediately, during the week, they'll take out of the bag of chips. They'll pass around the bag of chips. But on Shabbat, they'll immediately pour out all the chips into a bowl and throw out the bag. Because they don't want to be creating a useful bag on Shabbat. So they might even purposefully rip the bag so it's not usable again. So it's clearly you're not creating a vessel. And so when you open up the bag of chips, open it up in such a way so that you have to pour it out, and then for sure you're not creating a useful vessel. But there's room to be lenient. If it's a disposable, like I said, like a Coke can and a bag of milk or a bag of chips, nobody reuses them today, and so it's considered disposable. And you use it very, very temporarily till you finish what's the contents. There's room to be lenient, but that's a good question. We spoke about it yesterday. Yeah, you had a question too? 1 second. You had a question?
Yeah, I want to ask Rabbi,
1 second.
regarding this agriculture malakot, how do you define is a malakot agriculture? I mean, what's the requirement?
We have a list. We have a list. plowing, sowing. We're going through the list now. The next, harvesting. The next one is called gathering. We'll talk about each one, but there's a list of what it's defined, clearly defined, what the stages of the growing in the field it consists of. And we look at each action and we see, well, how does that apply nowadays, even if we're not in the farm? Let's do one more thing about the flower pots. The flowers, the problem is kotzer, right? We don't want to cut off the flowers. When you have flower not in a vase of water, you have them in earth. So we said, when you're in the field, when you're in the park, you have to be careful not to pour water, not to tear off any branches or any leaves. But now you've got a little bit of a field in your house, right over there, right behind you. See, there's a potted plant? Bring it over, Eitan, bring it over. Bring the plant over here. I'm trying to get it to grow. It's not really getting enough sun, I think. But so this is a plant that has earth in it. Needs a little more water. You think it likes tea? I hope so.
Yes,
I think it's fine. Anyways, on Shabbat that would be prohibited, right? Because it's going to grow better when it has water, right? And tearing off a little piece would be prohibited on Shabbat as well. So now there's two types of flower pots. The halacha discusses. One is the flower pot, like this one. If you look underneath, it has holes. It has holes in the ground. The other type of flower pot is sealed underneath. And the halacha says as follows. Let's take a look at page 84, section 10. It's chapter 19, section 10. Just as one may not break off a branch or leaf from a plant growing in the soil, so too one may not break off anything from a potted plant. If the flower pot has holes in the bottom, it's considered connected to the ground. So this is a rabbinic idea. It's very interesting. So if you have a potted plant, even though it's over here on top of a table, because it has holes underneath, let's say it's on stilts. Let's see how I'm holding it now. I'm holding it on my hand, or I'm holding it it's propped up somehow. The holes in the bottom, our sages tell us, it's as if it's connected to the ground because of the holes. Somehow there's a nourishment coming through the air, or we consider it as if it's connected to the ground. And so if there's a flower pot with holes in it, then one who plucks anything transgresses kotzer. By the Torah law, it's considered to be biblical, because the earth is considered to be in the ground, connected to the ground. If it doesn't have holes in it, it's not considered connected to the ground. That's not the way plants normally grow. Thus, one who plucks from it transgresses only rabbinically. Okay? Now, because of that, we have a very interesting situation. What happens if you take this plant? I'm not going to water it, and I'm not going to cut off a branch. Let's say I want to move it from the table to the side table. On Shabbat, because the holes are here, so it was considered to be planted over here. When I lift it up and move it, it's like I'm cutting off the entire thing. And then, if I plant it again, put it down again over here, I'll be planting it over there. So I'll be doing harvesting, kotzer, and zoreah every time I move the potted plant that has holes in it, because it's considered to be connected to the ground where it's sitting.
But even though it's not sitting on the ground, it's still connected.
Correct. It's considered connected to the ground, yeah. Take a look at the top of page 85. We'll see some of the laws. One may not move a potted plant from its place on Shabbat, because it is muktzah. It's considered klisha v'lachta le'isur, since watering its contents or picking them is prohibited. However, one may need it, move it if he needs the space it occupies. However, if you skip to the second paragraph, he says sometimes moving a potted plant is prohibited on account of zoreya or kotzer. For example, if the flower pot has a hole in the bottom, the size of a small root, and it is resting on the ground, the hole allows the plant to draw sustenance from the ground, is thus considered connected to the ground. Thus, one may not move the pot from the ground and place it on a hard plastic surface, because that would violate kotzer. You're disconnecting it from the earth, from its nourishment, from its connection to the ground, and you're disconnecting it. That's kotzer. Conversely, if the plant is on a hard plastic saucer, it may not be moved from there and placed on the ground, because that would violate zoreya, right? Because you're connecting it to the earth, planting it in the earth. Thus, if one needs to move the flower pot to use the space it is occupying, he must be careful to move it together with the saucer underneath it. If the flower pot tipped, some dirt fell out, you're not allowed to put the dirt back in. Doing so helps the plants grow, transgresses choresh, plowing, and zoreya. Additionally, soil is muktzah and not be moved, even if no dirt spilled, but the flower pot expose the roots of the plant, and they will be covered back up. If the plant is restored to a standing sound, one may not do so, because you're going to be helping the plant grow, even using one's foot, because covering the roots violates both choresh and zoreya. So we have to be careful with potted plants. That's why generally we don't handle plants like this on Shabbat. As I said, this is very difficult if you get a gift. Someone comes and he doesn't know. And instead of bringing you cut flowers on Shabbat, cut flowers, we have a solution already. You can handle them as long as you don't put them in water. But this plant, it depends. If it has holes in it, you shouldn't be handling it. If it's in a plastic bag, that's better. But don't take it out of the plastic bag, because then maybe it connect to the ground. Of course, nowadays, most houses have flooring. There's no earth,
Yes.
right? Well, this is stone tiles or ceramic tiles. And so it's a little bit more removed from the earth. So you don't really need a hard plastic. Although ceramic is earthenware, so maybe it's considered earth. So it's in general we don't handle potted plants on Shabbat. Also because it's considered muktzeh. Unless you need the space, you shouldn't be moving the potted plant. But if there's no hole in the bottom, and if there's a floor underneath, and you need the space, you're allowed to move muktzeh if you need the space. Most types of muktzeh. So that's allowed. Okay. So, yeah.
I got a question, Ralph. There's one day, my son on Shabbat, he went out and picked up a leaf. I think he plucked a leaf or what.
Oh,
Then he brought it back.
he's a child. I wouldn't yell at him, but
He brought it back and put the leaf onto our hand. So
Okay.
that leaf is a mutzeh, is it?
muktzeh, yes, muktzeh. Leaves on Shabbat are muktzeh. They serve no purpose. Anything that's not for human use, that's been set aside for human use, is prohibited. And so,
But I'm allowed to throw
what
it.
happens when somebody puts muktzeh in your hand? Sometimes I go to shul on Shabbat. We're going to learn about muktzeh in the next chapter. But the rule is, if someone puts it in your hand, you're allowed to put it down somewhere. Put it down somewhere. Once it's in your hands, it's in your hands. You can even walk to where you want to put it aside. Walk to the garbage can if you don't care about the leaf, or to a dresser or a counter or something, and you can put it there. You can walk with it once it's already in your hand by accident. So we're going to learn more laws of muktzeh soon. Let's finish up with the agricultural laws. The next type of work is called me'amer, page 86. Me'amer refers to gathering harvested grain into sheaves or piles. Similarly, one who gathers picked fruit and places them in boxes or piles transgresses me'amer, as one who gathers cut branches or reeds to use as fuel. So, we don't do that too much. Obviously, you're not going to be harvesting. But Here, if you're inside the house and some fruit scatter, you're allowed to gather it nowadays because it's not in the field. But some things, sometimes it does apply. The example, I didn't bring it in. I did bring it in. It's in the car. Excuse me a minute. Where did I park my car? Right across the street. I'm going to go get a present that I bought for our students. I'll be right back. You guys wait here for a minute. I'll be right back. Just across the street. I was at the bookstore yesterday.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
To heat, not to heat to. You take this and take this and
Heat again.
heat.
Hot water?
No, not the water. Heat is maybe my heat.
Heat?
No,
Heating thing.
heating things.
Ah, okay.
Like I heat this. Oh,
to hit.
yeah.
Okay.
Is allowed in the Shabbat?
Why is
Depends what?
Yeah.
Depends what?
Depends if it's mixed, you're not allowed. I don't know, you ask the Rabbi.
No. It is exercise between us because the rabbi is not there.
I think if you hit the thing, let's say you take a stick, you hit the stick broke, then yeah, it's not.
Mazal tov. This is a great book.
Yeah, I have this.
You have it. It's a great book. Teaches you about, what's it called? The 39 Avot. Avot means fathers or categories of Melacha on Shabbat. It's designed for children. It's wonderful. Turn to the page. They have a page for each one of the 39, or a few of them together. Here's the agricultural laws that we're discussing right here on this page. Wonderful page. And you can see this is actually one page, but it's 4 melachot. Choresh, plowing. That's what it was in the ancient times. And they have all sorts of examples of digging a ditch and plowing the field with a tractor, the way it's done nowadays. Next malacha is zorea, planting. So here we have somebody watering the lawn. Of course, that's prohibited on Shabbat. You're not allowed to water the plants. We have a few examples of things that are prohibited because of zorea. Then we have kotzer, harvesting. Here's somebody cutting off a branch. That's not allowed. We have somebody on a hammock with a little green book. The green book is a symbol which says it's allowed. Why? Because if you notice, the hammock is attached to a peg, which is attached to the tree. It's not actually on the tree itself, like I explained to you.
If tied on the tree, it's not allowed.
That's correct, because you're not allowed to use a tree. It's a rabbinic prohibition. You might cut off a branch. Here's somebody riding a horse with a branch that he is cutting off the tree. It's not allowed. You see that? Okay, so then we have the last malacha is gathering, the one we've been talking about now. Gathering fruit that fell from the tree, that's prohibited on Shabbat. That's why and then another example of here's a red book. The red book means, no, not allowed. Green is allowed, red is not allowed. And the idea is, what is he doing here? We're stringing together figs on a string. You're gathering the figs together. So it's prohibited, but there's not too many examples. You're allowed, here's a green book. Green book means you're allowed to gather up hats, because hats are not grown from the ground. It's not, foodstuffs what's prohibited is making up the bundles of sheaves. Anyways, it goes through, this is a wonderful book, it goes through all of the melachot. I wanted to show you, we went briefly, we spoke about the melachot which have to do with weaving. I'll just show you the page about the weaving. And this book will be here for you to peruse, for you to enjoy. the page about weaving is really beautiful. It's a very clear description of, here's a basic loom. You have pedal A and pedal B, which control, this is called a harness. A harness. Inside the harness, there's these little rings which the threads go through. The threads, I think they're called the warp threads. And as you can see, one of the pedals goes down, the other one goes up. So you have a hole between, and each one is connected to alternating strings. So when, instead of weaving in and out like this, up and down, basically you have this machine which pulls up every odd string and pulls down every even string. And then what do? You take this shuttle and you slip it through from one end to the other. And so you've managed to do, in this case, 3 weaves just by putting the shuttle through the other side. So that's the essence of a loom. And we said that there's 5 melachot, which have to do with weaving. Oreg, see this girl, she's weaving on a frame. That's also prohibited. Here we have potsea, which is cutting off the strings which are at the edge. This one is called oseshni batim nirin, when you actually put the strings, when you're setting it up, putting the strings into the little heddles, they're called, the little rings which hold them, and actually putting the strings onto the roller on the back and in the front is one of the actions necessary for oreg. And this is after, or actually before, you have to spinning, you take some little fluff, tiny little threads, and you spin them together to create one long thread, and then you use the thread on the loom. So that's called spinning. That is also prohibited. Anyways, so there's a lot of beautiful graphics and funny kids. Funny kids. It starts off, the book starts off with creation of the world. They have an English version and a Hebrew version. At home I have the Hebrew version. So I've decided to buy this for the class, for you guys who don't know Hebrew.
Where do you get this?
Where did I buy it? At
Bookstore.
bookstore. It's called the Feldheim bookstore. I can show you where it is from I could give you the directions. The first page is about what was created on each day, but then the next page is about the Mishkan, because we learn out what the 39 categories of work are from the Mishkan. This is what it looked like, the different sections, the different parts. They would carry the beams for the Mishkan and the various sections. And finally, we start with preparing for Shabbat. Just like when we started learning about Shabbat at the beginning of Volume 1, there was an entire chapter about how to prepare for Shabbat. We said there's the mitzvah of kavod Shabbat, preparing for it, all the different things that you do, getting your haircut, getting your bathe, putting on your Shabbat clothes, ultimately going to shul. After you light the candles, you go to shul. Here we have the shul, the people in the community, in the various homes, studying Torah, a father and a child, and lighting the Shabbat candles, of course. This is a nice description of the Shabbat home. And then we get into the page I showed you, the list of the 39 melachot. So we have 4 on each page, so it's about 10 pages of these various different types of melachot. This page is borer, zoreh, meraked. We talked about selecting, remember? We said here's the guy selecting out the stones. Here he's using the wind to winnow. Here he's threshing, taking them out of the kernels, and all the various types of things that are forbidden to do on Shabbat regarding selecting. Then there's grinding. Here's the meraked, the sifting. And here we have baking. The laws of baking or cooking on Shabbat, we went into some detail about that. Here we've sort of skipped over these ones that have to do with processing animals. We talked about gozes. You're not allowed to cut off hair, right? You're not allowed to even comb your hair, right? We talked about that. If you're for sure gonna milaben, laundering, we say you're not allowed to do the laundry, making things clean, wringing out the water from the laundering process. Menapetz is sort of one part of cleaning the wool, which is combing. So it's not too many examples of combing. So it's a very specific act which is done with sheared wool from the animal. Most of the examples on the page come from dyeing and all these different things. You're not allowed to paint, of course, and you're not allowed to. This is the real dyeing, putting the wool into a vat of boiling colored water. And here's the woman putting on makeup. You got to be careful not to put on makeup that sticks to your face. We said that there's a special type of makeup you can buy for Shabbat if necessary. Then we just saw the loom, and we're on to tying and untying. We spoke about that on Shabbat. Tying a double knot is prohibited. And then there's sewing and tearing. Here is tearing off one section of the pattern. She wants to use the flower for her artwork, whatever it is. So it's tearing. You want to use both sides. It's prohibited from the Torah, even tearing a piece of paper here. I was with spending Shabbat with some people, and the people I was with, one of them was reading a magazine. They have all sorts of magazines. There's Time magazine, Newsweek, women's magazines. There's Vogue, Cosmopolitan, all these family. What do they have? I don't know what the current magazines are. Sometimes you see something, or even you read the newspaper, you see an ad, or you see an article that you really like. So, it's Shabbat, and the woman sees an ad or an article that she likes. She tears it out of the page, tears the page out of the book. I'm thinking to myself, you're not allowed to tear on Shabbat. That's prohibited. So, but people didn't go to Machon Meir. Not everybody went to Machon Meir. Not everybody knows all the laws. So we have to teach them slowly but surely. Sewing up, of course, is prohibited.
Even advertisement is not allowed.
Right, you shouldn't be reading advertisements on Shabbat. Exactly. Also, we mentioned that. Then the other malachot, which maybe the next chapter is going to talk about, this is to do with trapping animals, trapping them and killing them, taking off the skin. Tanning is, getting the leather ready. So there's all sorts. I mentioned to you, pickling things in salt water is a problem of pickling on Shabbat. It's called me'abed. Then we have, again, we're going to get to these. Smoothing, we talked about that when it came to toothpaste and hand cream. Might be a problem in memareach, smoothing. So they would smooth the skins. Marking precise lines. In food it's allowed, but not otherwise. Then cutting to a specific size is a problem here. There's perforations I was telling you about, that it's best not to cut on the perforations because you're cutting it to a specific size. And then we have kotev and mochek, writing. You're not allowed to write. Here the guy is writing in the sand. And that's, or the guy is writing here in the window. Here it says it's prohibited rabbinically because it's not going to stay. So it's for sure not biblical. He says you shouldn't be doing it because it stays somewhat. So it's a rabbinic prohibition of creating letters. Then we have mochek. Here we have the issue of tearing off a wrapper. Tearing off a wrapper that's going to be breaking the letters, you have to try to be careful not to break the letters, if possible. Cutting a cake, the birthday cake question. It's actually interesting. The halacha makes a distinction whether the letters are part of the cake, or like when you bite a biscuit. In Israel, they sell biscuits that say on them engraved "Petit Bear," which means a little bit of butter. People in Israel don't know what it means. They just call it Petit Bear biscuits. It says on them in letters Petit Bear. So can you take a bite? You're breaking up the words. So because it's engraved, it's part of the cookie, you're allowed to. But on top of a birthday cake where you just put writing in icing, it's more of a problem. You should try to cut so that you don't actually break the letters on Shabbat. But there's more details here. Yeah?
Is it like you can break the letters or can break the words?
Both. Both. If you have a word and you break it apart, it's also prohibited. Boneh. Boneh and soter. Building and destroying. We talked about the various applications of that. This is mechabe and mav'ir. Lighting a fire and putting out a fire, we talked about that. Extinguishing. Here you're indirectly causing the fire to go out. You're putting the water all the way around it. Right? That's allowed. The little green book. It's a very cute book. And makeba patish, the final hammer blow. We spoke about that originally when you're making a vessel. The final blow, which perfects things, is a problem on Shabbat. And one of the reasons, so you're not really allowed to fix things, because making them fixed, making them perfect, is one of the prohibitions. And so that's why the rabbi said we don't play instruments on Shabbat. Usually when you play guitar, a string breaks. Or when you use a string instrument, you have to fix it. Fixing it might be a problem of makeba patish. We mentioned also bottle caps, according to some interpretations. The next section, which we're going to study now, is about caring. I think we're finished now. I'll put this book away for now. It's here for you guys to enjoy and study. You can borrow and bring it back, but not for too long. But overnight, for sure, you can take it for a day. If everybody takes it for a day, they can do some review of the laws of Shabbat. We were in chapter 19. We finished it up, and the next chapter is dealing with animals. And we see that there are a number of melachot. The melachot come towards the end of the chapter. When it talks about trapping and killing, trapping and killing is prohibited. But because there's another problem that the Torah actually, when it talks about Shabbat, it mentions that you should rest and your children should rest and your animals should rest. So, do you know that your animals have to keep Shabbat? They have what? So the animals are not allowed to plow or to harvest? No. So we have different rules of what does it mean that your animal is going to work on Shabbat or rest on Shabbat. So let's take a look at the beginning of chapter 20. Beginning of chapter 20, before we get to the melachot themselves of trapping an animal or killing an animal, there is the issue of rest for animals. The beginning of chapter 20. Okay? Stephen, why don't you read for us?
Rest for animals, just as the Jews is commanded to rest on Shabbat, so too he is commanded to allow his animals to rest. There are two commandments that address this issue. One positive, said, as the Torah states Shemot 23:12. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day you shall cease, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the son or your manservant and the stranger may be refreshed. And one negative, lo ta'aseh, as the Torah states, Shemot 20:10. But the seventh day is a Shabbat of the Lord your God. You shall not do any melaka. You, your son, or daughter, your male or female slave, your beast, or stranger who is within your settlements. The mitzvah of allowing animals to rest is not one of the 39 malakot, but the mitzvah is its own right. Its violation is not punishable by death or lashes. Shabbat 154a and
Mishneh Torah.
Mishneh Torah 20, verse 1 to 2.
Okay, so we have, before we talk, we can't keep going in the list of the 39. We're going to. There are some melachot which deal with animals, like I showed you in the book just now. But before that, we have to talk about an additional Torah mitzvah, that the animal must rest. So how do we define what that means, the animal has to rest? It can't be what it means for us. For us, what did we say? If you're in the park, you're not allowed to pluck little blades of grass. But for an animal, that's his food. He grazes, right? So what does it mean that the animal has to rest? Does it mean he's not allowed to eat? So we have a different definition for what rest means for Jews, for people, humans, and for animals. We're going to hear about them right now. That's the rules that your animals have to rest on Shabbat. Okay, keep going.
Even though the Torah in those verses mentions beasts, oxen, and donkey, the prohibition applies to all animals, including birds and fish. Mishnah Berurah 305, verse 1. Therefore, one may not release carrier pigeon on Shabbat, and one may not use trained dolphin to pull a boat. The Torah specified the ox and the donkey because they are the beasts of burden most commonly used for plowing and carrying heavy loads.
So it applies to all animals, basically. Okay, so one who causes an animal to carry.
One who causes animal carrying a load to move from one place to another on Shabbat, whether by striking, pulling, or ordering it, transgress Torah law. This prohibition refers to Mechamer.
Mechamer. It comes from the word chamor. Chamor is a donkey. Mechamer, making the donkey work. Donkey is used. The donkey was the truck of the olden days, right? The truck. So if you make the truck move from place A to place B, you're using the animal. The animal's not resting. You're not allowed to cause the animal to carry things. Okay, even if an animal belongs to a non-Jew who is ownerless, what may not cause? Go ahead, yeah?
Even if the animal belongs to a non-Jew or is ownerless, one may not cause it to walk with a burden. If one causes his own animal to do so, then in addition to transgressing the law ta'aseh against doing work, he has also violated the aseh of the following animal to rest. This is in the Shulchan Aruch 266 verse 1 to 2.
And Mishnah Berurah
8 log 7 to 8. The latter commandment applies to on Yom Kippur as well. There is disagreement about whether it applies on Yom Tov. See Mishnah Berurah 246.
Okay, so most of us don't have animals that we use as beasts of burden. But we also mentioned that you're not allowed to ride an animal yourself because you might break off a branch. But let's skip to the page 91 and let's say you have a dog. So usually you don't use a dog to carry things, but you wrap them up sometimes. You put on clothing so that they're not cold. Now, what if we're going to see that there's a law of carrying? You're not allowed to carry outside if there's no eruv. So the dog shouldn't carry either. But if that's considered his dress, it's okay. Let's go on there to see something more practical. If you look on page 92, it says a dog may be allowed out in the public domain wearing its collar, because that's the normal way for it to go out. It allows one to restrain the dog if necessary. So a collar, the dog can walk with a collar even if there's no eruv. It's not considered to be that he's carrying a burden. The person holding the leash, also, wait, if you don't have an eruv, let's say you live in Sweden, there's no eruv as far as I understand, in Stockholm. No eruv. So you can't carry your key, you can't carry. Can you take your dog for a walk? So he says here, yes. The collar, the dog is wearing it for its own protection. And what about the leash? You can't carry the leash. The person holding the leash is not considered carrying it, since it is secondary to the dog's body. It's sort of being, it's attached to the dog. However, he must take care to grasp the leash within a tefach of its end. In other words, if this is the leash, and so you hold it from here, you're holding on to the dog, that's fine. The dog is leading you or go walking and you're leading it from here. But let's say you hold up over here, then this additional section of rope is useless. You don't need that, so you're carrying it outside on Shabbat. So you have to hold it all the way at the end. He must also make sure that the leash does not droop to within a tefach of the ground at any point. Unless if there's no eruv, we'll see that you're not allowed to carry outside. So if it's on the ground, it's not connected to the animal. You were saying it's the animal's carrying it, and you're just holding on to the animal. But if it falls close to the ground, even if it droops within one tefach, a hand's breadth, 8 centimeters within the ground, then it looks like you're actually carrying the leash. It's not attached to the dog. You're carrying it picking it up from the ground. If the leash is too long, you may wrap it around the dog's neck so it is less likely to droop. Bottom line is, it's quite tricky business. You have to have a very short leash for walking your dog if you don't have an eruv. Maybe that's one reason a lot of Jews didn't have a dog when there was no eruv. But
Rough, if the leash is too long, then we wrap in our hand because they're carrying. Is it?
Yeah, if it's not really helping.
But how about those they can retract?
Retractable, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I think that's because it's all part of the leash. It's not drooping uselessly. Yeah, I think that's allowed.
You can catch a dog.
That's trapping. We're going to see at the end of the chapter. We're going to see about it soon. We'll talk about the laws of trapping. Depends if it's your dog and he usually comes home, so it's considered to be that he's already trapped, and it's not like a wild dog that you're going to hunt, right? Of course, somebody who's a blind person, I'm on page 92, section 2, blind person who may enter a public domain with a seeing eye dog, even though he's holding the harness attached to the dog. Since the harness is always attached to the dog, it's considered secondary to its body, is no problem of carrying. Okay, also dog tags you're allowed to have connected because it's for the sake of the dog. The dog, will be taken care of or not stolen because he's got the tags. It shows people that there's an owner. Okay, but we'll see. We'll see some more laws of taking care of dogs and taking care of animals. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue the chapter on the animals. There's a few things that you have to know about before we start the laws of carrying. The laws of carrying we'll cover next week, and we have to do a song because it's Thursday. So let's get out our special Bir Konim, and we'll do something L'chvod Shabbat. I already gave you a Dvar Torah for the Parsha. If you remember on the first day, I showed you all about how the Jewish people become a nation. At the beginning of Shemot, we moved from the 70 children of Yaakov right? From 12 to 70 children of Yaakov who came down to Egypt. If you want to see, by the way, Eitan, we talked about the precise calculation of how we get to the number 70. So that appears in Rashi at the end of Parshat Vayechi. He says, when you count them, we see there's only 66, or was it? So anyways, he works it out. There's a few different ways to work it out that we get to the symbolic number called 70, right? The 70 nations. Shalom. Did you alarm clock not wake you up today? Something like that?
No, he was sick. I get up at 4, so I told you I need to take
You have some things, of course, no problem. Please hand Ravi the birkon so that he can. I taught you Yibane Amikdash, if you remember. This time, let's see, one, something that you'll come across, if you, turn to page 119. A member of our class, who was a member of our class, he'll be leaving soon, is getting married tonight.
Yes.
Amos. And of course, the invitation was all in Hebrew. He sent it to our WhatsApp group. But if you didn't understand what that is, it was an invitation to participate in his wedding. It's a chuppah, yeah. If you look at page 119, can I help you? Oh, you found it. You found it, even though it's hard to read the numbers. The bottom is the classic wedding song. If you can see in the very, very bottom in English, it says, soon, od, meaning soon, Yishama, Lord our God, Be'arei Yehuda, may there be heard in the cities of Judah, Uvechutzot Yerushalayim, in the streets of Jerusalem, the sounds of joy and gladness, the sounds of the bridegroom and bride, the joyous sounds of bridegrooms from their wedding canopy, and of young people from their feasts of song. So here we sometimes, even if you're older, you get married. Not quite young people, ne'arim, but you can get married at any age. But this is a prophecy from Yirmiyahu, which is it's part of the brachot of the Sheva brachot, the 7 blessings that we say after the chuppah, in the chuppah, and afterwards as well. It's part of the celebrations. It's for many years it was a prophecy of hope, a vision. One day we'll be celebrating weddings in Judah. Tonight we're going to the hills of Judea. It's right outside of Jerusalem to hear the sounds of a chatan and a kala. In Hebrew, kol sason. Kol is the sounds. Kol simcha. Kol chatan. Kol kala. You see the word kol 5 times. Kol mitzalot chatanim. If you look at the Hebrew, you see on the second line of the last line and the line before the last line, the word kol. Kuf, vav, lamed. Over here, you see? Over. Kol sason, kol simcha. Kol chatan, kol kala. It's a poetic repetition. The sound of a chatan, the sound of the bride, the sound of a groom, the sound of joy of one kind called sason, joy, and the sound of simcha called gladness or happiness. So let's practice these words. I think I know it over 10 different tunes. It's a wedding song, wedding tunes. The wedding is the time when we celebrate and we really, it's a big mitzvah to be joyous. And so a lot of Jewish tunes were made up for these words, which speak about the joy of a Chatan and Kala. And of course, nowadays, we are in the hills of Judea and the outskirts of Jerusalem, the streets of Jerusalem. So I'll teach you one. Ohod Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. One more time. Od Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot. Once again, Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. Almost there's no wedding in Israel today that doesn't sing this song, this tune. When you're going to the chuppah, when you're coming from the chuppah, when you're dancing, when you're celebrating, at some point, people are going to maybe sing this tune and these words. So you should know it. You should get ready. You know, Eitan, your parents are going to get married too, hopefully soon. When is the course over? When do you finish?
I don't know. We have they planned 2 appointments in March and June. So it can maybe be longer or
shorter. Yeah. Okay. So March or June, you have some time. Okay. But you have to learn the song for your parents' wedding.
I know this already.
You know it?
Yeah.
So help me. Od Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. Od Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. Now the high part. Kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kala, kol sason. Again, the same line, the second last line. Kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kala. Then sometimes we just sing lai 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 la lai la lai 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 la lai 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 la 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 la. 12 words. That's it. 12 words. The last line is not part of this tune. So we'll do it once again. Okay, you got it? Od Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. Od Yishama Be'arei Yehuda Uvechutzot Yerushalayim. Kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kala, kol sason vekol simcha, kol chatan vekol kala. Lai 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 la lai 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 la lai 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 la lai 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 la 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 la. Do you know that Shabbat is called the Queen? And when we greet the Shabbat Queen, Lecha dodi likrat kala. It's like that she's a kala. A kala is a bride. So we treat the Shabbat like a bride. So sometimes we sing this on Shabbat even. You can sing this for Shabbat. Okay, so I wish you a beautiful, restful Shabbat. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll finish up. Tada, yafeh. We'll finish up the laws of Shabbat, hopefully by the end of next week. Another few hundred pages, that's okay. We can do it quickly. And we'll move on to the next topic soon, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, this book is a great, wonderful book on the laws of Shabbat.